Hey there, it's Jacob from the Sustainably Yours homestead, and today I'm out mowing the lawn, just the immediate lawn around the house. I don't like to touch the pasture out here. I generally just let this grow wild. I like the wildlife that it brings. We've seen a bunch of rabbits around our house. And then just the other day, I jumped a couple of covey of quail out here, and for these parts, wild quail, they're unusual. We used to have a bunch of them, but I don't know what, with the hawks, and I think the change in farming practices where they used to, when I was a kid, I remember they would leave like all the cotton stubble and everything, they would leave it there until the beginning of the next season, and then they would kind of plow it under. Nowadays they do all that stuff immediately, so for the rabbits and the quail and all of that, they really don't have a lot of habitat, so they've kind of become rarities. But something that I've noticed over the last little while, we have a lot of rabbits, and like I said, we've got some quail now, so I kind of like leaving the pasture the way it is. But like I said, I was out mowing the yard today, and we've got some garlic, elephant garlic or something. It's been growing right here in this spot. Since we moved in, there are a couple of patches. There's here, and then there's another one right over there. And these things will grow super tall. They put on these big, huge purple flowers. Bumblebees love them. So I kind of think it's elephant garlic. When I dug them up last year to see if it was garlic, the bulbs were like this big around, the cluster. So I'm pretty sure this is elephant garlic. But just last year, man, this cluster here was probably half the size it is now, and then none of these were here, so it's spreading like wildfire all the way out. I've kind of avoided these spots while I've been mowing. Give you an idea how far it's spreading. There's the farthest patch that I have, and there are the originals. So I think today I'm gonna dig up some of those smaller plants, the ones that have kind of spread away from the original cluster. The bulbs aren't ready on them yet. They look more like onions at this point. I think later in the season they'll form their little clusters, and I would rather wait until then. I've got a spot for them out here in my orchard. I'm trying to turn it into more of a food forest than an orchard. Let me show you what I've got going so far. So this is kind of the plan that I have for each tree. This is my Arkansas black tree right here. I've got about a 20-foot circle around it. Along the perimeter for this one, I have onions planted. I believe this section here, I've got walkways. So I've got it separated into 3 sections. In this section here, I have yellow onions. And then in here I've got some potatoes. They're not up yet. I planted them a little late. In this section we've got white onions around the perimeter and some more potatoes in there. And around this perimeter I have red onions, and I don't have anything in here yet. I'll get to that. And also right beside the tree in these 3 spots, I would like to grow something like comfrey or maybe mullein or something like that. Got one of my potatoes that came uncovered. I'm trying to do this potato patch kind of in a roof stout way, but I'm going to use dried leaves instead. We'll see how that works. It's an experiment. But ultimately I plan on doing something like this around each of the trees. Right now I have 6. I think the next one that we're gonna work on is gonna be the peach tree here. I know it looks like a mess. I had cardboard surrounding, I've got the leaves, but I didn't take the time to turn the ground in the full 20-foot radius. So I figured I would get to it when I got to it. In the meantime, I had this part covered with cardboard, and then we had a little storm and it blew the cardboard all over the place. So it looks more like a mess than something useful. But I think here around this tree in that perimeter section, I think I want to surround it with garlic, or in this case probably the elephant garlic. I already have some wild blackberries growing in between the peach tree and the plum tree, so I may leave some of that. But I guess the plan for today is going to be, after I get the yard finished up, I'm going to dig up some of that elephant garlic, some of the small plants that are beginning to spread, because they're in the way. I can't mow. Well, I could mow them over, but I don't want to. And it makes it tough. I end up leaving these big patches of unmowed grass. So I'm going to go ahead and dig them up and try to transplant them out there today. So I'm just digging down and trying to make sure that I free up all of the, right now I guess I would call them more of a bulb than a clove or a cluster. There we go. And like they're not, they haven't formed clusters yet, but you can see where last year this was a cluster of like a bunch of cloves together, and several of those cloves shot up. So for these, I think I'm going to go ahead and separate them when I replant them. And I'm just going to dig up the ones that have spread away from the main groups there. The plants here in the main group, around this side. I'm going to go ahead and let these grow. Look how thick that stem already is. I mean, it's already almost as big around as my thumb. That's why I say this is probably, oh, this one's way bigger around than my thumb. Get in there to it. Look at that. So that's why I say I think this is probably elephant garlic rather than regular garlic. Elephant garlic is more closely related to a leek than an actual garlic, but I think it's supposed to still have a light garlic flavor. So later on, closer to the fall, we'll dig all of these up. We'll have hopefully some nice big clusters. Some of it we may use in the kitchen, and a lot of it I'm going to break the cloves away, and we'll take it on out to where we're going to bury it in the food forest. And hopefully I'll be able to get enough to surround the entire perimeter of the tree pretty thickly. The reason I'm using garlic out there is it's supposed to attract some pretty good pollinators. I know this brings in bumblebees and those big purple flowers. There were several different species of bugs on there. So they bring in some pollinators, and garlic is also supposed to repel some of the pest insects and things like that. So it should be a good dual purpose. It's also edible. So yeah, a really good dual purpose plant for me to have in my food forest. Well, I uncovered, I think this is a firefly larva. These are pretty interesting little creatures. They are voracious carnivores. They overwinter in the ground, and then in the spring and summertime they surface, and you walk outside at night, the ground will look like a starry night sky. Once your eyes adjust and you look down, you'll start to see these firefly glows all around your feet. And if you look closely, you'll see some of these guys crawling around. They eat soft-bodied things like worms and snails. They actually will inject a toxin that paralyzes the snail or the worm. I guess depending on the species of firefly larvae as to what they eat. And then they'll just devour it piece by piece, just rip pieces off and chow down. But this one looks a little different than the ones that I find already surfaced, so I think it's probably not quite developed. I'm gonna put this dude back down in the ground, kind of cover it up a little bit, give him a fighting chance to survive. Come on up out of the ground whenever you're ready there, guy. Finished. And now I should be able to mow a little bit more easily. But I just dug up a bunch of elephant garlic plants, y'all. That whole bucket is stacked. Plants on plants on plants. But anyway, I'm gonna take the garlic on out to the food forest, and we're gonna have to clear out the spot where I wanna put it, and then we'll try and get it in the ground either today or tomorrow. It's gonna be a tough job. I think the garlic is gonna go around our Alberta peach tree. I've got a little rope here that I'll tie off to the bottom of the tree, and then I'll extend that out. I've got it right at about 10 feet, so I'll be able to kind of move that around and get the perimeter that I'm looking for in my circle. It'll be consistent. But this is gonna be a lot of work and it's gonna take a really long time, so I'm just gonna turn the camera off and get it done, and we'll see you later this afternoon, maybe tomorrow. I don't know how long this is gonna take. I'm using just a garden hoe to kind of scalp the ground. That's all I wanna do. I really don't wanna till up all of this stuff, so. What you doing? Okay, there we are. You're in the video. Well, that took a little bit of time yesterday. I finished it up kind of late in the evening. I went in and had some dinner, and we're back out again. It's the next morning. I've got all of the trenches dug, or the circular trench dug, where I'm gonna put all of my garlic. I keep saying garlic. What I mean is elephant garlic. I have marked out my paths where I'm gonna, in the future, I'm gonna lay down some brick to form my 3 sections. That way I'll know where to stop when I'm planting the garlic. So let's get started. I'll be using my string as a guide. So when I pull my string tight, this kind of marks the inside line where the bricks are gonna be. The brick will start here, the way around. I'm gonna plant my garlic, it's at about 4 inches apart. So we'll put one about here. I'm gonna try, I might squeeze them in a little tighter than they need to be. That's where they're gonna go. We'll dig in and we'll grab a few. There we go. I've had them soaking in water overnight.
Is that why they're so liquidy?
Yep, that's why they're so liquidy. That one. And I'm going to plant my rows about 1 foot apart. That's what I found online anyway. And with having this string tied around the tree, when I pull it around, it allows me to kind of make my rows radiate outward from the center. So instead of everything just being straight, and eventually as I go around my circle, things start to look weird, my rows don't line up. Pulling this string around will allow everything to radiate out, and hopefully it'll look nice and neat. So we're gonna put our next one here. Gonna put the garlic in there. Finally finished with that. Have you ever got about halfway into a project and realized, man, this is a lot more work than I thought it was gonna be? Got 3 plants per row. I think I counted 64 rows, but hopefully you can see what I'm talking about when I say I want it to radiate out from the center. As we make our way around. But I'm really not sure how these will turn out this year. They seem to be pretty resilient plants overall. I mean, I've mowed over those things numerous times and they still come right back. So I'm sure in the long run we're gonna be okay. I don't plan on harvesting any of these this year anyway. This is more of a future-oriented project. So I'm not too concerned about how they do this year. I think we'll be all right. We still have plenty over at the beside the house that we'll be able to harvest and eat some of later on in the year. As a matter of fact, even with the 100 and however many, I don't want to say it again in case I'm wrong. Oh, don't step on it. But even with all of those plants that I just put in the ground, I still have a little bit left in the bucket. It's kind of nice to make a little bit of progress in our little food forest here. On the homestead at all. I mean, we've been here for a couple of years now, and it seems like just this summer I've finally been able to get a little bit of traction in what we're wanting to do. And part of that I really do believe has to do with this whole quarantine situation. It's not often that I have opportunities early in the spring to get out and get started on my garden and things like that. Here in Arkansas, they're talking about beginning to open things up. Today is, I think, May the 1st. My wife is a cosmetologist, a beautician, and today the governor is making a decision as to whether or not they're gonna start opening salons and things like that back up. So hopefully, fingers crossed, she'll be able to open up shop here again pretty soon. And in the meantime, I'm just gonna keep on working out here to try and make a little bit more progress. Hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If so, please hit that like button and subscribe. And if you'd be interested in following along as we try and turn our home into a homestead, then be sure to ring the notification bell so you'll know when to be back for more daily, sustainable living.